Hello everyone, this is Zeeebo and welcome to today's AFK journey video. So we are back again with the third endless dream realm boss, and it's none other than King Croaker. So for King Croaker's case, right, this boss itself, this is the most meta lineup in terms of the carry slot. So before I showcase the damage itself, I'm going to explain a few mechanics that you guys might want to know, or the results in comparison to other carries or other supports. So for this boss specifically, the damage difference between OD, Merrily, as well as our dear Corin, it's very marginal. In a sense, there is a little bit of RNG depending on how lucky you are with your crit, depending on how lucky you are with your crit numbers, right? All these will change the final damage output, hence there will be a range in terms of the final result. So I have tested a few rounds with different carries, right, different positionings, and the damage range for this boss specifically ranges from around 39 billion all the way upwards to 42 billion on my own account as well. So there is some variance there. So for this boss specifically, right, the carry of choice, I'll say Merrily would still be the min-max type of carry because she offers like a very huge max, although she can be very RNG based, where if she is caught in a very awkward position, she get bursted now and then you lose damage from there. So in terms of min-max damage, I think Merrily will be the best one because of her potentially higher numbers. The most consistent one in terms of damage would be Corin, because this unit offers a shield which keeps your team alive for a little bit longer and also helps to shield targets which are low on HP so that he can keep your whole team alive for as long as possible. So for OD's case, OD is also pretty consistent in this boss because OD's bonus in this team is the additional stats from the factional bonus. So let's say now if you're running Corin, for example, right? So if I'm running Corin right here, this only gives you 12% stats. Whereas if you're running OD, you're getting additional 8% stats. So I think for the carry side of things, right, for OD's case, OD is able to match up to the other two carries in the form of Merrily and Corin simply from the factional bonus gains itself. So in terms of the damage distribution, in terms of the best carry for this team, all three carries, they work in one way or another. So if you have the stronger ones amongst any of them to use for this boss, you can use them respectively. So if Corin is stronger, use Corin. If Merrily is stronger, use Merrily, right? If OD is your stronger, then just use OD with this team if you have all the other units. Okay, so the must-have unit for this team is none other than Torrent, because you need a unit that can tank up the insta-Q. So this boss have 3 different insta-Q, and Torrent himself has 2 separate lives, so he will be very useful in tanking the insta-Qs. So if you want to maximize your damage, you will need Torrent. If you don't have Torrent, right, you can obviously use the likes of Fresto, because Fresto's additional body also can block the boss Q. Right, so if the additional body gets insta-killed, the main body can still stay on the battlefield and then continue to do what the unit wants to do. So that is one way you can slow down the insta-killing for your team if you don't have Torrent. So if you have Torrent, just use Torrent, right? So this is Torrent positioning over here. So we have Smokey, so Smokey is there obviously for the supportive purposes. And then we have our dear Reina. So very similar from yesterday, like in terms of the core units. So Fresto over here. So for Fresto's case, for this boss, I'll say I like to put the carry in the damage reduction position, and then I'm going to give Reina the energy regen, because there is a final few seconds of the boss where the boss will spew out the ultimate to deal massive damage, and that's where the carries, they don't survive very well. So I want to use damage reduction on the carry so that they survive that final 20-second mark so that they can continue jamming in damage. So that's the rationale for this positioning. I think you can figure out a better positioning for yourself, but this is probably, in fact, I think this is the most optimal tip. Okay, so I'll compare the damage between, I'll say, Merrily and OD for you guys to see. For Corin's case, Corin's damage will be very close to OD. So we'll start with OD first, the 4 factional bonus. Let's start. Okay. So for this boss specifically, I'll say, in terms of the damage output compartment, you can go with a full magical team. I think stats do matter against this boss because this boss damage numbers, they are pretty consistent, except that they are scaled to the final HP loss. So since the boss doesn't have a way to increase the damage further, I think once you have sufficient stats, you should be able to tank through the barrages of damage from the boss itself. So for this full Mauler 4-1 tech or 4-1 factional bonus, we are getting 20% stats, which will keep our units alive for a little bit longer. So as usual, like when you're playing against the boss, the longer you survive, right, if you can survive the full duration, the more hits you can jam in, and then potentially that's where you get a higher damage. So for this boss specifically, if you have a Mythic Plus Torrent at the very least, the purpose of Torrent is to use to sort of soak up the insta-kill. So over here, this is what I mean by that burst damage from the boss. So even if OD have passed away, the poison tick from OD is still kicking in, hence we are able to hit the 40 billion mark. So this is for the OD team, the 4-1 factional bonus. Okay, so this is the damage number. So if OD had survived for a little bit longer, OD might be able to jam in more hits to do a little bit more damage. So next, let's move on to the Merrily core. So this is with Merrily as a carry. So if now we use Merrily as a carry, right, Merrily's damage output will have a higher cap in a sense because Merrily has more crit. Right, Merrily is able to crit more. So depending on how many times she crit, depending on how big her crit numbers are, this will affect the final damage output. So for Merrily's case, I'll say she's probably the better carry if you want to min-max your damage. Meaning like she can go really low as 38.5, but she can go all the way upwards to 43, 44 based on what I observe. So that's for Merrily's case. Obviously, your levels do matter as well. If your account level is slightly higher, your units obviously gets more stats. That's where you have more survival and more damage as well. Okay, so you guys can see for yourself. And to be really honest, right, I think Freya's third skill is finally working decently well in terms of dealing damage because it's supposed to be a HP percentage damage. So when the scaling of true damage becomes, I'll say, more impactful in the late game, so is HP percentage because in terms of it being a consistent damage source, it is able to consistently hit on the boss through a fixed percentage or a fixed number. So this is what I mean by that last stretch of 20 seconds. So you guys can see for yourself, the boss just killed off almost everyone, but Merrily is still damaging. So right here, right, we didn't survive longer, so we are at 40 bill as well. Okay, so this is the damage number for Merrily compared to OD. So in general, between Merrily, Corrin and OD, I'll say Corrin's number is the most consistent because his shield is able to just protect the right target to prevent the burst. So you guys realize by now that when the boss kills off one unit, subsequently every other unit starts getting killed off. So Corrin is able to reduce the chances of that happening and has the most consistent damage out of the three if you want to talk about consistency. So that's for the carry portion. This is the most meta team. Okay, so now I'm pretty sure most of you guys, as usual, will voice out concerns such as, if I don't have Frey Esto, what do I do? So if you don't have Frey Esto, just use this setup. So this setup is the Corrin setup. So Corrin sort of act as a secondary damage dealer as well as shielder. So I can safely say this is the second best setup because this has a balance of both offense and defense in a sense because you have heals from Rainer and Smokey, and then you have Corrin shielding your target, and you still have Torrent to tank the insta-kill. So this is second best team, I'll say. Option number 2. Another way you can do it, right, if you don't have Rainer, just use Coco, right? Coco fix the problem, and if you are missing a little bit on the factional bonus, then just switch your carry for OD. It works as well. Right, this will give you this 3 factional bonus, so that's one way you can plan around it. Personally, I'll say the usual units which work against other boss can be used for this one as well. In fact, there's actually another team which we have been using for quite a while, which is the mage team. And I'll say this is the endgame variant for the mage team. So I'm not sure whether or not it will still work against this boss specifically at this level, but no harm giving this a try. So this is the team setup, right, for the mage team. So if you are doing this, then the spell of choice is Crescent spell. So this is one. If you have Satrana, you can obviously try Satrana. Okay, so for this case, what I'll do is I will actually use Satrana for this run. Okay, so this is the mage team setup. Then I'll do the second best team setup later on to showcase the damage difference. I'm not sure whether this is the third or the 4th or even lower damage range. But let's just give it a try. This is the full mage team. This is one variance that you guys can try. So the reason why this team might work is because Froki over here or Croaker over here is a magical damage dealer. So if you have Satrana in your pool with EX weapons, Satrana actually reduces magical damage for herself as well as one other allies. At the same time, her season skill is able to boost the damage output from all the magical damage source, namely Reina, OD, as well as herself and your artifact. So generally, she offers quite a big boost in terms of damage output and a pretty decent utility. So as you guys can see, from here, she's actually doing crazy good damage. Okay, 35 billion. Although the magical damage scaling starts to fall off a bit, as you can see the damage slowing down. So I believe we should still hit the 40 bill mark. Okay, so now our dear Torrent actually fell off. But because we have Satrana in our party, Satrana is able to provide that additional magical damage down. Okay, so this is OD. Okay. Okay, so this is one team as well. I'm really surprised by this damage output. So surprisingly good. This could actually be another alternative for you guys. So this is the magical Mauler faction side of things. Right, I don't think Cassidy can do better because Cassidy will cause you to lose some stats, but you guys are free to try against this boss specifically because I think for Croaker's case, magical damage against this boss is still decent, right? It still hits pretty well. So that's for the magical team. Okay, so next one we'll do the Merrily plus Corin team. Okay, so let's go with Merrily and Corin. Okay, so we go back to evocation spell. So for this one, you have two damage dealers, right? You have Corin as well as Merrily. And you have, I'll say, sufficient sustain because you have shielding, you have healing, and you have the dynamic balance heal as well. So I think generally this team should also fare close to the 40 build mark. So just now that mage team with the OD Satrana showcase was pretty decent, right? That is one team that you guys can use if you have Satrana invested. And as I mentioned earlier, the reason why Satrana is decently good against this boss is because this boss is a magical damage dealer. So her being able to reduce the magical damage incoming is actually good to keep your unit, at least one of your unit, alive for a little bit longer. So that's why that comm actually works for this boss specifically. So that is if you have Satrana and if you're running an OD main. So this is the damage number. Okay, so we are, I think, probably hitting the 39 build mark. Yeah, so Merrily died a little bit early, unfortunately. So the RNG is quite high for this boss. Therefore, the best way I'll say like to deal with the boss is to just stack up as much stats as possible. So that if the boss throws out that ultimate, if that boss doesn't kill you, then you're able to heal out with the likes of Smokey as well as Reina. So this is the damage distribution. This is a dual core spread, right? So the damage between each carry is a little bit lower, but because you have two carries dealing high damage, you are still able to hit that peak a little bit higher. So this is 38 billion. Specifically for this boss, I think all the three comms will work. But based on our multiple rounds of testing, the only comm that was able to reach the 42 build mark based on my own account as well as this account is specifically the Fiesto as well as the single carry strat. Okay, so this is the highest damage one, okay, with damage reduction on your carry and then energy regen on your support. So that's for the three best teams so far. I think in terms of substitutes, I don't think Torrent is substitutable. So if you have a Torrent, try to use him. This is for the insta kill. For Smokey's case, as usual, any healer works as well. I think if you don't have Smokey, try to get him. If you don't have him, any other support works in terms of healing up your team, although they will offer lesser offensive prowess. You can also run Skalita in the place of Reina if you went for the Skalita route, because Skalita offers, I'll say, decent damage while providing a seasonal skill damage boost for your whole team as well. So if you don't have Reina, obviously Reina is the better choice, but if you don't have him, then you can use Skalita in his replacement as well. If not, I think just run the Coco Smoky variant. It is also okay. Then just finish things off with a little bit of factional bonus over here. So you can use Satrana, you can use OD, or maybe you can even try to use Elsa, right, in this final slot. Okay, so this is it for the endless meta King Croaker guide. Right, thank you very much for tuning in. Do remember to like and subscribe to see more, and I'll see you guys again in my next AFK journey video. Bye guys.